Hey folks, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to dive into a test and review of Army Painter's Metallic Speed Paint 2.0 set. Now these were donated to the channel. I'm not sure if the donor wants their name said in the video or not, so I'll leave them to their privacy for now. But the reason that I wanted to review these and test these is because I have said on the channel, and certainly in other places as well, that I didn't think metallic speed paints would ever exist. Because of the way that the trick of speed paints and contrast paints works, the way that the medium works of pulling more pigment down into crevices through capillary action to make shadows appear darker or more richly pigmented, I just don't think it would work with metallic speed paints. That said, they're right there. So maybe I was wrong, but in order to know, we've got to test them. There are 10 paints in the set, and I intend to test all of them, both over matte white primer, which is what they recommend, but also over the slap chop technique that we all realistically use a little more. Alright, let's dive in. This particular set comes with 10 different paints. Included with that are 3 silvers, 4 golds, although one of them is really a metallic green, 2 bronzes, and a copper color. On top of that, it also comes with 2 brushes, which, well, not game changers, ultimately, you can never have too many brushes. I do happen to like the Army Painter synthetic brushes, so it's a nice bonus. Naturally, there's also some advertisements and some stickers inside. There's also a small booklet that covers traditional paint methods and advice, without really talking about speed paints, so that's a thing. Like all other Army Painter paints, these come in dropper bottles and have 2 mixing beads already in each bottle, which is a practice the rest of the industry would do well to adopt. It definitely makes it feel like the people at Army Painter actually paint and understand how it feels to use their own product. As I mentioned, I'm going to test each color over the recommended white primer and also over a slap chop prime. Personally, I was not expecting to see a huge difference in the level of contrast between the two. In fact, I am not expecting much of a speed paint or contrast effect at all. The first paint is Hoplite Gold, a sort of brassy yellow-gold color. While there isn't a massive, dramatic contrast effect, there definitely is some contrast, more than I thought there would be. Interestingly, painting it over the slap chop base has 2 effects that I hadn't really predicted, and these effects actually stay true throughout the entire test. One is that the contrast effect is lessened by slap chop, not enhanced by it, and I suspect that's related to the second oddity. The coverage of these paints is actually better over white than black. That's extremely strange for a metallic paint. Normally you would only paint metallics over a dark base coat. Otherwise they tend to turn out pale and desaturated. Not so with speed paint metallics. Almost all of these look better over white in my opinion. And they also cover with a single coat. And alright, I can admit it, there is a contrast effect there. It's a little different than what we might get out of regular contrast paints, but it's definitely present. Of the 3 traditional gold colors, I think the third one, Glittering Loot, is my favorite. It's a nice rich gold without going too red, and it still retains that little bit of contrast effect. As you can see though, all 3 gold colors provide different tones and have interesting looks over both white primer and underpainting. This brings up something though that has dogged contrast style paints since the beginning, and honestly, with some of the recent additions from various companies, it's only gotten worse. Inconsistency. Some paints behave one way, others a different way, even within the same paint line. Some have excellent coverage, some are incredibly thin, some are best used as a glaze, others as base coats. There are paints like some of these metallic speed paints or some of the newer Games Workshop offerings like Bal Red that barely have a contrast effect. And there are ones like Plasmatic Bolt or Pilar Glacier that are barely even glazes. That doesn't make them bad paints, of course, but it does make them individual tools that you have to learn the quirks of individually. Rules or guidelines about best practices, they rarely stretch further than a single pot of paint, never mind across an entire line. And that's not really great for a product that is supposed to be a time-saving device. So what are the things that I can say definitively about this entire set? They cover well over white, for one. The results over black are a little more mixed. Some look good and some don't. I can also say that all of the paints go on very, very smoothly. They're not gloopy or thick. They don't need to be watered down. They feel easy to use and they come off the brush well. I was never fighting to get any of them where I wanted them. And finally, of course, there's a nice color selection. I like all of them, but my personal favorites are probably Enchanted Steel, Talos Bronze, and Brazen Copper. I also really like Aztec Gold, though I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for. I feel like it's one of those things, though, that now that I have it, I'll find an excuse to put it on something. I'll also just go ahead and say it. I was wrong. They do have a contrast effect. Some more than others, granted, but it's present enough that it adds to the paint job. More than that, with the smooth application, mix of both staple and more interesting colors, and that they go on so well over white primer, these will definitely be getting added to my commonly used metallic paints, no question. I would say that if you're a beginner, if you really like contrast style paints, or if, like me, you use white primer a lot and would be happy to have a set of metallics that isn't an obstacle for, then these are a great purchase and I can fully recommend them. I should also mention that all of the images and final results from these tests, they're linked below in full size, so that you can easily reference them if you want to as well. I'd like to once again thank all of you for your support, especially the viewer that generously donated this paint set to the channel. Thank you. If you want to support the channel yourself, there are links below to help you do that, all of which I appreciate more than I can say. Of course, one of the biggest ways you can help is to hit like and subscribe, or to recommend the channel to friends that might be interested. Thanks for watching, folks. And as always, there's more content on the way, and I'll see you on the next one.